Senators, I rise today to speak to Bill C-6, an act to amend the Citizenship Act and to make consequential amendments to another act. This bill's provisions will amend elements of the Strengthening Canadian Citizenship Act, Bill C24. Before examining the substance of the bill, I would like to start by discussing what it means to become a citizen of this country. For Canadians, citizenship means far more than the benefits that come from being a citizen. It means that Canada is their home, where they will be spending their futures. Just like any homeowner, citizens tend to their country through their work and participation, making it flourish. Just as a better home ultimately gives its residents a better life, a better Canada provides Canadians with a better quality of life. This is equally the case for Canadians who have earned the privilege of getting their citizenship. When Canada becomes their home, they join their fellow Canadians as equals and assume the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. Honorable Senators, their children who are born there earn the right to obtain citizenship. Thus, they ultimately work together to see their country flourish. This was also the case for me as a refugee. When I came to Canada long ago, I knew my future would be here. Canada is my home. I knew that this would be my home, and I proudly took up the responsibilities and privileges that came with living in Canada. I knew that this would also be the case for my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren would have the right to gain citizenship. I knew that even if they would share my dual citizenship, they too would be able to join their fellow Canadians as equals as they take on their own duties and roles as citizens of Canada. Since we see this country as our home and a permanent commitment, we are driven to look after it and contribute as part of the greater Canadian community. Unfortunately, recent changes to the Citizenship Act C-24 have been made in complete opposition to this idea of Canadian citizenship. 2 years ago, the former government passed Bill C-24, also known as the Strengthening Canadian Citizenship Act. Under Bill C-24, if a Canadian citizen without dual nationality commits a terrorist or a criminal act in Canada, our government cannot affect their citizenship. However, if that same person was a dual national, the minister could move to revoke their citizenship. The bill also created several requirements for Canadians that either had serious practical concerns or held them to different standards than other Canadians. These changes created two different classes of Canadian citizens. One of a Canadian citizen who are able to face justice before a court and are given an appropriate punishment for their actions. On the other hand, dual citizens face additional punishment with the revocation of their citizenship. By creating this unequal standard for children of new immigrants, when providing them with the knowledge that our laws can strip them of their citizenship, we are telling our dual citizens that they have not gained a home at all. Amendments to the Citizenship Act, like those made by Bill C-24, make some Canadians into tenants, which can be removed from this country at the whim of the government. A tenant does not share a homeowner's motivation to work towards seeing their country flourish. When a Canadian knows that their time in a country could be cut short at the whim of the government, they cannot hold the same loyalty as a Canadian who knows that this is their home forever. Honorable Senators, Canada works because we all are proud Canadians, and we all want to build a great Canada together. Furthermore, when a dual citizen is treated under a different set of standards and laws that puts them at a disadvantage compared to mono-citizens, we cannot expect them to have the same drive to work for their country as a person with a whole set of rights Canada has to offer. I discuss this view of citizenship because it motivates me to rise today in support of Bill C-6. With the passage of Bill C24, Canada's citizenship law has become unjust and sets a precedent stating that dual citizens alone can be expelled from this country at the whim of the government. I believe that this is a bad precedent for Canada to set, and support the government in their attempts to restore equality to our citizenship laws. Bill C-6's provisions will address the parts of strengthening Canada's Citizenship Act that place Canadians under unequal standards. By bringing the Citizenship Act in line with the principles of the rule of justice, Bill 6C restores certainty in the fact that Canada is the future for all Canadians, whether they are mono-citizens or dual citizens. I will begin by examining the element of C-24 that plays the greatest part in creating two classes of Canadian citizens and the solution Bill C-6 proposes for it. If passed, Bill C-6 will repeal the minister's authority to revoke the citizenship of dual citizens that have been convicted of terrorism or other serious crimes. Honorable Senators, by supporting this provision, I am not condoning the actions of terrorists or criminals that have committed heinous acts in Canada. In fact, my support for this bill is based on one principle that is central to Canada's form of justice, the rule of law. Before I became a senator, I practiced law in British Columbia. Every day as a lawyer, I witnessed a principle that is central to our idea of justice here in Canada, the rule of law. The rule of law states that every Canadian citizen is subject to the same laws and will face the same justice system when being charged with their crimes. Rather than leaving justice in the hands of government, all individuals are treated under the same fair system that treats all individuals equally and holds them to account for their actions. Our laws embody the most basic social values that we hold here in Canada. We agree that it is wrong to commit heinous crimes, like terrorism and other serious criminal acts, and therefore codify them in our laws. Canada also holds as a core value that all citizens are ruled by the law, rather than the decisions of government. In recognition of this principle's importance, the rule of law has been written into our Constitution. Most notably, Section 15 of our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms declares that every individual is equal before and under the law, and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law, regardless of origin. This equality includes the administration of justice, where all individuals are subject to the same criminal laws in the same manner. The fact that the rule of law embodies our most basic social values is exactly why the changes to the Citizenship Act made by Bill C-24 worry me very much. When the government has the ability to revoke the citizenship of dual citizens for criminal or terrorist acts, while mono-citizens are instead tried before the court system, it is not acting in accordance with the principle of the rule of law. Effectively, it is against the core values that make Canada. Bill C-24 has left a worrying legacy in Canada's law. In an attempt to punish terrorists and criminals, it instead loses sight of justice and created a different system for some Canadians fraught with legal concerns. I want to be certain that my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren will always be regarded as of equal status as other Canadians. By repealing the ability of the government to strip the citizenship of dual citizens and pushing for equality in the administration of law, Bill C-6 restores certainty in the fact that all Canadians will be treated equally under its laws. To summarize, Bill C-6 does not forgive those guilty of the worst criminal and terrorist acts for their actions at all. Instead, it ensures that they face justice through the proper system and that an appropriate punishment is handed out. Justice for criminal and terrorist acts has its place, and it is not by politicians in Parliament. It is in court, where all Canadians are tried under the same legal system. With Bill C-6, our government has taken great steps to ensuring that the Citizenship Act respects the rule of law and attempts to ensure as much procedural fairness for applicants as possible. Honorable Senators, however, I caution, the bill still continues to allow for a Canadian citizen to have the citizenship taken away without any hearing or right to full disclosure of the case being made against them. Given that revocation may affect the life, liberty, and security of the revoked citizen, a failure to provide a fair hearing may well be a breach of Section 7 of the Charter. If the government truly wishes to stay in accordance with the Charter and the principles of the rule of law that it embodies in the other sections of Bill 6, then it should also consider addressing this unjust part of the Citizenship Act created by strengthening Canadian Citizenship Act. Honorable Senators, I rise to support Bill C-6 today because the bill represents a return to the important Canadian values that define us as a country. The rule of law, natural justice, and equality are all for all individuals. We do not divide citizens, we unite citizens. However, my support for Bill C-6 goes beyond mere legal principles. I also welcome the message that it will send to all Canadians. In Canada, we respect the rule of law and equality for all individuals, regardless of their origins. These principles bring in about 250,000 new permanent residents to Canada every year, who know that while their past may be in the country that they left behind, the future will always be in Canada. These people know that they, along with their children, will be able to enjoy the fairness that is inherent in the Canadian system. As I mentioned before, this fairness has an incredibly significant impact. The knowledge that Canada will always be the future for all Canadians will inspire them to join other Canadians in working to build our great country, in the same way that a homeowner would improve their own home to improve their living conditions. Senators, you've heard me say this many times before. I believe that the House of Commons, the other place, is the place that caters to the majority. The Senate was created to protect the rights of the minorities. I believe that the House of Commons can often act as a scissor and divide communities. I believe the Senate is a needle that sews divisions up. The Senate creates beautiful quilts with the work we do. We in the Senate keep our country united. Stop the seeds of divisiveness, even before they are planted or bear fruit. Why? Because that is why the Senate was created. We, the senators, are the guardian of the rights of minorities. Seeds of division fragment us. Seeds of unity flourish. Senators, I have thought a lot about whether I would share this story with you, and I have decided to share it with you because it has really shaken me to my roots. 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to my granddaughter, who is 3 years old. And in her house, her parents have no television, and they do not use many electronic devices. She came back from school. I picked her up from school. And as a child, when they learn some new information, they think they're the first ones who know it. So they always tell you, do you know? And so she asks me, do you know Donald Trump? And I say, yeah. And say, do you know what Donald Trump says? And I said, yes. And she said, do you know that Donald Trump says that Muslims are not good? And I said, no, he doesn't say that. He said, yes, 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 my friend said, you're a Muslim, so you're not good. This is a 3-year-old girl that has no TV in the house. Senators, the seeds of divisiveness in the South are also being planted here. I, as a grandmother, am crushed because I'm a proud practicing Muslim. And I know in my great country, nobody will say that to me. I say to you that C-6 is more than anything we can ever do. When I travel around the world, people say to me, how does this work? Uganda threw you out, you became a refugee, and you come back to Africa as a senator? What do Canadians drink? And I say, may I have 5 minutes?
Yes, colleagues, granted. Great.
And I say to my fellow Africans, the wonderful thing about Canada is the minute we land here, we are proud. When we get the privilege of becoming citizens, we build our country. Nobody treats us differently. We are the same. Yes, there are some issues that we have to figure out. But we are a great country. And so I ask you that when that 3-year-old little girl is told, not from our leaders, I'm glad to say, that Muslim is not something you are proud of, we in the Senate are the needles that will keep our communities together. So I ask you to very carefully think about your decision on C-6. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Senator Pratt. Senator Pratt.
Yeah, well, I move the adjournment unless there are questions.
May I ask the Senator a
Question? Senator Eaton?
Senator Jaffer, thank you for your speech. I would never dream, and I don't think anybody else would, of putting your rather exemplary life of hard work in the same mold as somebody like Zakaria Amara, who came to this country at 14 and was sentenced as one of the Brampton 19 for an act of terrorist against the Parliament buildings. Why would you think, do you really think he wants to be a Canadian if he came here at 14 and yet 4 or 5 years later he's plotting to destroy our democracy and create chaos? Do you not see a difference between not revoking his passport, but yet somebody who came to this country and years later we find out that he was a war criminal in Bosnia, and yet we render him stateless and revoke his passport instantly? Do you not see a little bit of a difference there?
Senator Jaffer.
Same injustice?
Eaton, let me tell you that every time there is a bombing or some kind of problems around the world, every Muslim I know sits down and says a prayer that I hope it's not a Muslim. Because we are not proud of the acts of some that commit them in our name. So I don't hold any brief to those people who try and destroy my great country. But I, as a senator, know that we cannot create a law to take care of that kind of situation and put all dual citizenship people, all law-abiding citizens in the same category. The way we deal with the person who commits that heinous crime is we deal with them in our court system, we deal with them tough, we give them great punishment, and we make sure that they get the wrath of our country. But we don't put all dual citizens, all Canadian hard-working citizens in the same category.
Senator Eaton.
Greet him at the prison door with his passport. It'll be a lovely picture.
Pour accepter une question. Oui, je suis d'accord avec une grande partie.
I agree with a great deal of what you've said, because I think the grandeur of Canada, I'm thinking of it, it's one of the most admired countries in the world. We have a high quality of life, and we have extraordinary values. And that's why I find it strange. The people would think it's strange to demand that when someone wants to become Canadian, they say whether or not they intend to reside in Canada. So why would be a disagreement with asking if people intend to reside in Canada, because it's asking if these people want to contribute to Canada.
Senator
Ms. Jaffer. Eh bien, selon moi, on ne parle pas des personnes qui ont obtenu la citoyenneté en venant ici. On parle surtout des personnes qui ont une double citoyenneté. Et comme je l'ai dit dans ma présentation, si vous venez ici sans avoir une double citoyenneté, votre citoyenneté ne peut vous être enlevée. Mais étant donné que je suis citoyenne britannique et canadienne, j'ai une double citoyenneté. Mes enfants profitent aussi de cette double citoyenneté. Cela signifie que, mes enfants ou les enfants de quelqu'un d'autre dans la même situation, si jamais ils commettaient un crime et que leurs parents ont une double citoyenneté, on aura recours à une norme différente en révoquant la citoyenneté. Et quand on dit oui, on vient ici, on a l'intention de devenir Canadien, oui, bien sûr, on a cette intention. Et une fois qu'on a le privilège d'être Canadien, eh bien, quand on commet un crime, on est puni dans le système canadien parce qu'on appartient à la famille canadienne. Sénatrice Jaffer, votre temps est écoulé. Voulez-vous plus de temps?